go. Good evening, and thank you for joining the Voice of Many podcast. We have always heard of people living in pain on a daily basis. When pain hits us, we tend to focus on the pain, but there's always a cost associated with the pain that we're going through. Our guest today has lived with chronic pain on a daily basis, and she's lost so much as a result of the pain, but she's gained so much in experience and knowledge as well, to where she is now an advocate for pain. Our guest, Miss Barby Ingle, is the president of the International Pain Foundation. She is here to share her story and to provide some insight on health and the financial impacts that pain leaves us in. Welcome to the podcast, Miss Barby. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you, Vanessa. I'm so glad you guys brought me on to be a guest and to share with your audience and share with each other. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. Our guests, those that are watching and listening, it's too bad you don't get a chance to have the conversation part that we have with great topics with our guests. And we've had almost 30 minutes conversation before this recording started. But it is so important to listen to what Barby has to say, the experiences that she's had, the knowledge that she has, the voice alone is very powerful. And we urge you to please listen, take in, and digest everything that she has to share with you today. So in sharing, can you tell the listeners and those that are watching a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I've been living with chronic pain for over 20 years, and I have multiple conditions. It first started with endometriosis, and then I thought that was bad, but I got through it with a full hysterectomy. So I don't know if that's really getting through it or radically changing my life. But I thought I conquered the world. And then a few years later, I was in a minor car accident, and it triggered a rare disease called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. And that put me on a whole new course. I thought I knew what pain was. And then once that kicked in, it was like burning fire pain. That's what sympathetic is, your nervous system. It feels like someone put lighter fluid in my veins and caught me on fire. And then I also have loss of muscle and bone, and all my reflexes are haywire. So eating is troublesome, digestion, that whole process. Being able to cry, actual tears is an issue. And having that, I ended up in a wheelchair for 7 years. I had to become my own best advocate. I was not listened to. The first 3 years, having this rare disease, the doctors didn't know what to do. They didn't even know how to diagnose me. So those were the worst 3 years where I did all the wrong things. And then I finally said, I have to be responsible and stand up for myself. And when I did that 3 years later, that's when I started getting help, but it still took another 4 years after that to get the right help. So it has been definitely a process. And now I know I have to stand up for myself every single time, even when I'm tired.
Wow.
So with finding out you had that rare disease, what kind of process did you have to go through to get it diagnosed?
So I actually had a family member, and I actually have another family member now that has the same rare disease. One's blood related, and one was step sister that was through marriage related. And I went to a doctor and said, I think I have this disease. My stepsister has it. And he said, 100% you don't have it. It took me 43 doctors to get to the right doctor that diagnosed me. And on average for people with chronic rare diseases, it takes 7 to 8 doctors. It took me 43. And they kept giving me the wrong diagnosis. And finally, after 3 years and 43 doctors, that 43rd doctor had me send all of my medical records to him, and he went through all of it before he even saw me, and then said, I think I know what's wrong. And he was able to diagnose me, but not treat me. So it was like, yes, I got a diagnosis, but now what? Now what do I do? There has to be something more. And so then I started the quest for finding something more.
Wow. So with that quest, what type of treatment options are there for people like yourself living in chronic pain?
So there's the easy one, which is opioid medication. That's an easy one. And some people, that's all that is helpful and working for them. For me, I went through 38 nerve blocks in my neck, and 37 radio frequency ablations through my neck, where they actually stuck a tube down through the front into right next to my spine, and were burning nerves every 4 to 6 weeks. And all it would do, it would take my pain from a 8 to 10 level pain down to maybe a 4 to 6 level pain. And after 4 to 6 weeks, it would wear off, and I would be back in bed bound. When I wasn't bed bound, I was wheelchair bound, and that was really how I was living my life. It really took a large process, but I had to add in other options. I've used virtual reality. I've done stem cell therapy. I've done many seizure medications and other types of medications besides opiates. I took NSAIDs for a little over a year and got internal bleeding from the NSAIDs. That it turns out you're only supposed to take NSAIDs for 7 days in a row or consecutively. And my doctor kept ordering it, so I kept taking it. And I ended up in the hospital for 7 days, and then 3 months of at-home care with a home nurse, just to get through the internal bleeding from the NSAIDs in that whole experience. So I've done meditation, TENS units, posture apparel. I've done a lot of different options, and I'm constantly reevaluating what I'm doing, how I can find new things. And for the watchers, listeners of this podcast, know that just as we all have many voices, there's that many treatments. There's so many things to try. And for me, it wasn't one particular treatment. I used multiple treatments to get the best care and to live my best life. And although I still live with chronic pain, I'm able to be functioning and get up and do things each day. And that's what it's all about, is getting back to being a contributor in society and finding what treatments work for me. And I think all of us need to do that. Don't settle for one thing. Look for variety that can work together and complement each other so that you can be the best you possible.
So
Go ahead first, Nessa, and then we will circle back around. Go right ahead.
How did you mentally and emotionally feel going through that whole process?
I felt like my body was on fire, but so was my whole life. I lost everything. I lost my house. I went down onto food stamps. I had a marriage of 10 years, lost my marriage, lost my ability to drive, didn't know where I was going to live, what I was going to do. And it emotionally and mentally, it was a very depressing time. It was the worst time of my life, especially those 3 years that it was like just a dumpster fire, throw my whole life into it. Lost I had a cheer and dance training company. I also was the head coach at Washington State University. When I got sick, we were ranked 5th in the country. I was like on trajectory to be first place. I was making a great life and a great living, and literally got sick and lost it all within a year. And I was grasping and holding and trying to mentally hold on. And I went to counseling, and one of the counselors that I was seeing said, I want you to go home and do this this is your homework. I said, okay, what are you going to have me do? I got like dumpster fires everywhere. Now you're adding something else to me. All right. And he said, I want you to go home and write down all the things that you are. Because all I could say was, I lost this, I lost this, I lost this, I lost all the things in my life that I'd worked my whole life for.
Yeah.
And he said, go home and write down all your I ams. And about halfway through the week, he called and said, how's your list coming? And I said, I have nothing on my list. I am nothing. I suck. I've lost everything. I have no purpose. And he said, you have a lot of things. Let's get you started. And he said, I know you pray. I know you're spiritual. I know you go to church. That's number one on your list. I am spiritual. And he helped me get my list started with I am spiritual, and which is so fitting because in the Bible it says I am, like all these things through God so many times. And he, my counselor wasn't necessarily religious himself, but he recognized that I was. And so I started with my list, and by the time I got to his office, I had about 50 things on my list, and by the time I left, I had about 75. And now I have over 150 I ams that have nothing to do with my job or what I do. It's who I am. And every time I'm having a bad moment and I need to have a pick me up, I go take out my list. I have it like right next to me. And I look at my list and remind myself of I am all these things. Maybe I don't feel all these things all at the same time, or maybe this one conflicts with that one, but I can be both of those things, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It makes a whole me. And it showed me my worth putting that list together. And it's so helpful. I think that everybody should have an I am list. And when you're having a bad moment, a bad day, a bad week, month, year, go back to your I ams and remind yourself that you're here on earth for a purpose. And through those I ams, you can fulfill your purpose. And it might be hard, but it's okay. It might take time. That's fine too.
Whenever you were talking, only thing I could think of is look at God.
He is great.
You know, and in a sense that where look at the chronic pain, look at the internal bleeding that you've had, look at your paralysis, look at how you had those things, but look at where you are today. You know, and I say, look at God, look at where he has brought you from, where he brought you through. And it helped you to see that the material things, the titles, that didn't matter. It's who you are is what really counts. It's who you are on the inside. You know, and a lot of times we go through things and we don't, like I was telling you earlier, we don't know why we go through them, why we experience the hurt, the pain, the deception. But yet and still it makes us better so we can be that inspiration, that voice for others. So,
and
yes.
I believe I was a cheerleader my whole life, and the doctors told me I'll never be a cheerleader again. And I had to block that, I'm not listening, and say, I am still a cheerleader. I just have to do it mentally and emotionally instead of physically. And so I now say I'm a cheerleader of hope, because I can't physically cheer and do a backflip and all of the things I was doing, but that doesn't mean that I can't motivate and inspire other people to live their best life. And it's not going to look like my life, and my life might change tomorrow, but that's okay. That's the experience of earth.
Yeah. What I want to ask you, how did you take your voice and turn around and make your doctor visits to where they really worked for you and gave you the voice that you needed to be able to get your symptoms and what you were going through out there?
I learned to not be afraid to be a responsible person in the relationship. That what I do matters, and I have to speak up and speak out, or I won't get the care that I need. Sorry. Something's in my throat, literally. No, I have to speak up and speak out, and that I ended up doing something that I haven't heard anybody else do back then, but now I know other patients that do this as well. I created a one pager, and I include on that one pager, I take it to every visit, and I say, these are the medications I'm on. Just a reminder, doctor,
Mhm.
does anything stick out to you? This is it in writing. Not on their forms. On their forms, I write C attached.
Okay.
That also saves me a lot of time in their office. So, but then I say, these are the complications or the challenges that I've had since my last visit with you. These are the questions that I've thought of since my last visit with you. And then they always ask you to give us a list of your surgical procedures. Well, I have over 50. I'm not listing that every time. So I put that in really small print at the bottom of the page. And I take that every time and date it. And that has changed. Like, it keeps us on track. It gets all my questions answered. It even like triggers something with the doctor to say, oh, I heard about this clinical trial or this new option coming down the pipeline, and let's discuss it and have a discussion. And we use my one pager to guide that time together. And it's been really helpful. And it's also helped, like when I've had to go to the ER, especially my primary care doctor, he'll say, I refer back to your latest one pager instead of going through my notes and reading my notes, which doctors famously don't have great handwriting, right? So, so they just he goes through my notes and he can call the hospital ahead of time and say, these are the issues she's been having lately. Look for these types of things. And it prepares the ER, who a lot of times don't believe chronic pain patients. And it prepares them that, hey, this chronic patient is coming in. We need to look past the biases or anything else that we have to get this patient the help that they need faster.
It's good. It's good advice. Good advice.
What are some few tools that you would recommend for people to access better and proper and get more timely healthcare? Because we all know sometimes healthcare is not as timely or as fast as we need it to be. But how can we, keep them on their toes to help us?
Oh, goodness, that's a great question. And you're right, it's not as timely as it should be every time for every patient. And we don't get the individualized care. One of the biggest tools that's helped me is a test called pharmacogenomics. And we say PGX for short because it's faster and easier to remember. It took me a while to learn how to say pharmacogenomics and what it meant. But basically, you do a cheek swab. They send it into a lab and it comes back and it tells you all the medications that are right for you or wrong for you. And it's color coded. But I took this twice. The first time it was letters and numbers on 3 pages and I didn't understand it. My provider didn't understand it. Then the FDA approved it. And now it's so simple to understand. It's color coded: red, yellow, green. Red, don't take. Yellow, take with caution, be supervised. Green, you're going to do fine. Take it as directed. And it's every FDA approved medication is in the system and they connect it to your genetics specifically. And it tells you what is right for you. So you hear of babies that get sick and they need penicillin and they get penicillin and they have an allergic reaction. And sometimes they pass away or, bad things happen to them that go with them the rest of their life. With this test, I didn't get it till I was almost 50, but if we could give this to children, to our youth, get them to cover that, get insurance to cover this, which some insurance is covering it. Medicare covers it. TRICARE covers it. If we could get this for anybody, any age, the sooner the better. We can get the care that's individualized for us. It's not like now you go into the ER and the ER doctor is like, you're just trying to seek a certain medication or a certain outcome. This literally tells them, this is the medication that this patient needs for this issue that they're facing. And that was a huge help and has really changed my whole trajectory with the pharmaceutical end of what I do for care. And I suggest that. I also did a test called Viome, which I don't know if you're familiar with microbiome testing, but that one tells you what to eat. The PGX test also had some food suggestions in there, but those were like related, like you get heparin, so you don't eat celery. You get this thyroid medication, so you don't eat soy. So the biome testing or microbiome testing, that told me these are your superfoods, eat more of this. These are what your body cannot process. When you individualize care like that and you have what you know is right for you, and you can follow it, it's so much easier. You're not wasting time. You don't have to do the elimination diet where you just miserably cut everything out and then add a little bit back in, trying to see what affects you. This tells you before you even have to go through any misery to find those things out. So for me, that was very beneficial, but also learning, knowing about my disease. People sometimes will go, oh, I have diabetes or MS or sickle cell, and they don't learn about their disease. Learn about your disease and know what types of things can come down the line, and also keep track of what new things are coming down the pipeline that can be helpful for you, for your condition. They might not necessarily be right for you, but knowing what's coming down the pipeline and knowing there's always things coming down the pipeline for that disease is really helpful. Create an oasis around you, especially for the time I spent in bed or wheelchair bound. I had a basket on the front of my wheelchair, and then I had next to my bed on my nightstand, I had all the things that I might need. So when my husband was gone at work, everything was right there. It's my little oasis where I had something to read if I was up to reading, or needed to take my temperature or blood pressure or water or anything else that you need. You create that oasis right next to you so that you have the tools. A lot of times we can visualize them and you're like, oh, my migraine's kicking in and it's really bad. It's harder to think and process. What do I need? But when you see it on your oasis, it's right there. You can go, oh, I haven't tried that yet. Oh, I forgot about this option that I have. That might work right now. And seeing that is really beneficial and helpful. And then reach out, seek help. Know that you can say, hey, I'm having a bad day. I'm not processing this, or I'm dizzy, or what have you. And let the people around you know, when I can do something, I will do it. When I need help, I'm going to reach out and ask for help. And you're more likely to get the help that you need. Sometimes people say, a caregiver says, I don't have the ability to help, or I don't know what to do. Well, when you reach out and specifically say, could you get me some water, or just each night before we go to bed, can you make sure I have a glass of water next to my bed, whether I can get it myself, or if you don't see one, can you make sure I get it? Because in the night I wake up from snoring or whatever you're going through, and you need that refreshment, or, whatever it is. Planting those little seeds in your life, reaching out and asking for help. That's how you grow trees and you create a community and get the help that you need as you need it. And they don't see like, oh, she's just a complainer. They see, oh, he, she, whoever it is, needs this particular help. And it's something I can do to feel like I'm contributing to benefit their life. And so those are like my main my main ones. I could keep going on, but just know that there is hope, or that you should have hope, because there is help. You just have to reach out and ask for it.
Wow. In looking for the hope and the help, how can those listening and watching save on their hospital bills, the medical bills?
Huge. So as you said, I've been chronically ill for a long time. I've had over $1 million in medical bills, and I am debt free. And this is how I did it. And this is how you can follow what I did and do it for yourself. First off, when you get your bill from the doctor's office, it usually arrives before you get your explanation of benefits from the insurance.
Right.
Don't pay the bill straight off. Wait until you get the explanation of benefits from your insurance company. Compare the two. Typically, the patient responsibility that has been negotiated for you by your insurance company is less than what the doctor billed you. And once you pay the doctor, it's very hard to get the money back. Trust me, it's happened. Okay. So I wanted to, in the very beginning, I was just writing checks. And then I ran out of money and was like, what do I do? And then I learned I should not have been paying that money. I should have been comparing my bills. 8 out of 10 medical bills has a mistake, according to JACO, which is our hospital system. So they've done studies, and 8 out of 10 bills has a mistake, which means that if that bill has a mistake on it, insurance doesn't cover it how they're supposed to cover it. So you're paying, you have to look for those mistakes. If a letter is misspelled in your name, if your date of birth is wrong, if your member ID number is incorrect, if you have two insurances, some people have like their spouse works and they get disability or Medicare or something like that, or access or Medicaid. Make sure that they're billing both or all three. If you have three, however many insurances you have, some places will get lazy. Doctors' offices can get lazy and they don't bill the secondary. Make sure that they bill the secondary first before you pay anything. Make sure all the negotiations are done. If you don't have insurance, or if your patient responsibility, say you're in the hospital for a week and it's $100,000 and your portion is 20%, which would be 20 grand. I don't have 20 grand. What am I going to do? Right? Two things. One, I had a bill like that. It was $114,000. They told me it was going to be $18,000. I'm like, my house isn't even worth this. I don't know how I'm going to pay this. So I wrote to my insurance company and said, they didn't even send this to you. They told me that you wouldn't cover it. They didn't send it. I'm sending it to you and I'm asking you to negotiate it on my behalf. And they did. And the bill went from 114,000 down to 25,000. And I had paid 18 of that. I got a check back for $17,500. So it's only because I wrote to my insurance and said, hey, wait, help me. I deserve help. Another bill, I got the bill. It's like $18,000 is my responsibility. And I saw, it was during Katrina, the major catastrophe. I saw Catholic Charities helping all these people, or saying that they were helping all these people. And I was like, wait, I've been Catholic my whole life. Like, could I get some help? I didn't know we could get help, you know? And I wrote them a letter and was like, hey, you're helping all the Katrina people. Great. If there's anything that's available or left over in the funds, could you help me with my bill? And they helped me with that bill.
Wow.
Now, if neither of those work, when you do your community outreach, you can go straight to the hospital or doctor's office and ask for a charity form, or to be a charity case. And don't feel bad about it. You take that guilt right off your chest and you drop it away from you, because that's what the program is for. It's to help anybody that needs help with their bills so that they get the care that they need. And you don't feel like, oh, I can't go back to the hospital because I got a bill there. No, you still should be able to go to the hospital. You should be able to go to the doctor and get the care that you need as you need it. So take that guilt and put it aside, because it's not for you. And if I have a bill and I can't handle it, I'll write the hospital or doctor and say, hey, I can pay $10 a month and that's all I can pay, or whatever it is that I can do. If I can't do anything, then I write them and say, I need a charity form. It's a 1-page form. Typically you fill out that form. It's really simple. You give a few lines as to what your situation is, and you send it back in. And knock on wood, so far, everybody that I've sent it into, for myself personally, and the patients that I've helped, have gotten their bills totally wiped out. And knock on wood that continues. Please, God, please keep your hands around us and on our hearts and the hearts of the people doing this program. But it's something that the providers, the hospitals, they can write that off on their taxes. They're making buku money from insurance companies already. And that is why they have charity case money. So if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it. It's worth just to ask, and it's worth to say, hey, you should have no guilt about getting the help that you need when you need it. And that's how the system should be working. And it does work if you know to ask for it. A lot of people just suffer in medical bills and feel drowned and take away from their other family members of getting the care and the things in their life that they need, because they're paying this medical bill, which could have been a charity case or could have been negotiated down. Typically on the bills that, before I knew to do all this, when I wrote the doctor and said I could pay $10 a month, and they accepted that, after about 6 months, they saw that I was serious and that I was sending my $10 in each month. And they said, hey, we're going to negotiate this down to nothing. And so once they see that pattern, I've had them come back and say, hey, we see you're struggling. We hear that you're struggling. We're going to help you. So know that you can do that. So those are some ideas of things that people can do to make sure they never end up in bankruptcy from medical debt, because it's not a place anybody should be.
Oh, it's good.
So can you please share a few words of encouragement with those who are watching and listening?
Yeah, you're not alone. Every person on earth has a challenge or challenges, and we're faced with them. And sometimes when you're going through them, you can't see the why. But the why isn't necessarily what you need to know. What you need to figure out is, how do I move forward? And if you're having trouble moving forward, know that even the smallest steps take you forward. As long as you keep active and you keep trying to go forward, you can accomplish things, and you'll look back and say, oh, now I see the why. Or, this is something that a door opened because I went through that challenge, and that challenge was tough, but I never would have been in the position I'm in now to get the things in my life if I didn't go through that challenge. And that it's okay. We all face challenges. It's what we do with them. And if it's too overwhelming, break it down even further. If you feel like you're putting stress or pressure or guilt on yourself, take that off of yourself. You put it away from you, and you do what you can do. All we can be asked is that we try our best. Yeah. And as long as you know that you're trying your best, in some moments, that means today my best is laying in bed, or today is taking a shower and going back to bed. Whatever your best is that day, that moment is all that you should be thinking about and working to accomplish, to get through that moment and move on, because good times are coming. Tomorrow will always be a better day. And when I say tomorrow, I don't necessarily mean physically tomorrow. It could be an hour, it could be a week. It could take some time. Just work your way through it. And if the steps are too big, break them down to even smaller steps. To pass a law, it takes 5 steps. They told me that, and I was like, 5 steps, that's easy, I can do it. And then I started doing, I just this year passed 2 laws here in Arizona. I helped lead it. I couldn't pass it. The voters had to vote, but they passed. I helped write the whole thing. But then I learned there's like 1 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 2 A, B, C, D. Oh. I'm like, what is this 5-step thing? It is not 5 steps to pass a law. But then I'm like, okay, this is like how we deal with challenges. We take step 1 and we break it down into all the littler pieces, and we accomplish them. And don't feel like you have to do it in order. You can jump around, do the ones that are easier, and what's left you can give more time to. Get the easy stuff out of the way, and then focus on that harder stuff. But yeah, it's literally just break it down and give yourself these smaller steps in the big steps, and you'll end up getting your goals accomplished.
Well, I want to say this on the behalf of myself, Vanessa. Bravo. I mean, information, the knowledge, for your life experience. I'm going to go ahead and say it for those listening and watching. You have been very instrumental, very valuable, with your voice. Don't stop. Don't stop. I mean, because the tools, the tips that you passed along, those nuggets, they're so true. I know myself, whenever I was in the hospital with a few years back, when I had my $100,000 bill, I was paying it. I set up the payment plan, but yet and still, after I got into the process of making the payments, I was like, well, I need assistance. And then it was like, well, if you missed your window for us going back to the insurance company, to go to them to make adjustments on your bill. I was like, I didn't know. So what you're saying is very, very true. You have to wait and challenge whatever invoice you get from the hospital with your insurance company. And also too, like you say, look at your bill. I was fortunate, the very last surgery that I had, um, I was looking at the bill, trying to understand it. So was the insurance company. And the hospital, um, the clinic that was doing the procedure,
Yeah.
they wanted to use this new instrument that had just came out on me to do the procedure. Well, it was never approved. So go through your invoice, your bill with your insurance company. And if authorization was not approved
Requested.
by your insurance company, you do not pay for that
Exact-
service.
Yep.
They have to take it off because it did not go through their approval. And that's why it's so important, if you have insurance, that you get with your insurance provider and go over the procedure, you know, inform them, because they don't know, they only know what the doctor's saying. But the more communication you have with that insurance provider, the more protected you are for when that bill does come. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you
And
so
there,
much.
there is typically, every state's a little different, but typically about 6 months where you have to get it all together and figure it out. And so do it as fast as you can, and don't be afraid, and don't feel bad because, oh, this bill's too high. Our system is set up for people that need help, but if you don't ask, you will not get it. And then you're going to have your credit affected, and you're going to have all different aspects and parts of your life affected. So, it's definitely important to take that energy that you do have and put it towards taking care of. Even a 1-page sheet of paper could make the difference in
Yeah.
how much you owe and how that affects the rest of your life and everybody in your life.
Yes, very true. Very true. All right, Vanessa, I'll let you go ahead with your question.
So how can our viewers and listeners get in contact you and find out more about you and get help too with their financial bills as far as medical and advice?
So personally, they can go to my website, barbyingle.com, and find out about what I'm doing personally. Reach out to me if you want to talk to me individually. That's where to go. Barby Ingle, with Barby with a Y, Ingle with an I. And then with the International Pain Foundation, I'm the president of the International Pain Foundation, and we help people from all over the world that need help. And we do education, awareness, social events, and access to care. And if you need help, there's a lot of resources right there on the website that are free to access. Find a provider app. There's all kinds of, my one-pager is on that website. There's all kinds of resources and disease, over 150 different disease information. And it's definitely a great resource that people can use. So, and that's internationalpain.org. So make sure you check that out as well.
And those that are listening and watching, will make sure her information gets out there to you. And please do not hesitate to reach out to Barby, reach out to us if you have any questions. Definitely, we will do all we can to get Miss Barby back, to answer any questions you have, to share more information. It is very helpful to have a voice whenever you're in this situation. A lot of times, even with our elderly, our parents, our grandparents, and even sometimes with our college students, whenever you're away and you go into the hospital, you're afraid. You don't know what to ask for. You don't have that voice for you to speak for you. And the more of us that have that knowledge, that are informed, the better we're going to be, not just for ourselves, but for each other as well. And that is part of the importance of what Vanessa and I do, is to be able to have that information out there for you to help you to be more educated, enlightened, and inspired on what's really going on around you, what tools that you have out there that can really help you. And you will be surprised, like Barbie said, there's so many resources out there that we still to this day don't know about. I mean, and we haven't even hit the surface. I mean, but the more we know, the more we're able to go out there and get people like Barbie and bring to you and to keep you informed. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to keep searching and digging to be able to help you.
And we want to thank you so much, Barbie, for joining us and being with us. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And thank you so much for your knowledge.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me be one of the voice of many. And I invite all of your watchers and listeners to please give you guys a 5-star rating and tell you how awesome you're doing. Leave a comment, get engaged, and let other people know the information that you're learning from this podcast, from all the different guests, not just me, but all the guests over time, and that it's very helpful and hopeful for us to have you guys as a resource. So thank you both for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to those of you who are watching and listening, please don't forget to follow us on our social media pages. And also, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as we don't want you to miss out on our great guests or our great topics. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.